Good evening, everyone. My name is Paul Rebolledo. I'm the CEO of Tandem Finance, and I have the pleasure to introduce Mr. Stephen Horan. Stephen is the Managing Director of the Americas region at the CFA Institute. He's responsible for strengthening relationships with CFA member societies, financial institutions, universities, and regulators in the region. Stephen has an impressive experience on both the financial industry and also the academic world. Steve holds a PhD at the State University of New York at Buffalo, and owns the CFA Charter, the CIPM designation, and the CAIA designation. Thank you, Steve. Thank you. We will have a 30-minute presentation, and then we will have a 15-minute Q&A session that will be led by the co-founder of Tandem Finance, Rolando Luna Victoria. Rolando is also the responsible of the investment strategy at Profuturo Pension Fund. He holds a master's degree in finance at the London Business School and is an economist of Universidad del Pacífico. He also has the CFA Charter. Welcome, Rolando.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul.
Well, Steve, thank you very much, and please go ahead.
That sounds great. Well, Paul, thank you so much for inviting me. It really is a treat. It's a privilege even to be with you both, and the entire team, I'll call it here. Really want to thank you for turning some focus onto the CFA program. If you're so inclined to turn either hosting abilities or presentation abilities, I'll share a screen, and that might help facilitate some discussion. There we go. I think this is the right one. Tremendous. So it really is great to be here. And I think we're going to talk about the CFA program most notably this evening, and provide a little bit of an outlook for 2021 on a number of different dimensions. But before we got into that, I think it's really helpful to provide some context about what CFA Institute stands for, what it does as a global professional body, and because I think it helps motivate much of what we do. So, first and foremost, our mission is to lead the investment profession by setting the highest standards of ethics, education, and professional excellence. And very importantly, we do that for the ultimate benefit of society. So more than creating jobs, more than building careers, we want to build a profession that serves investors. And by doing that, we think we make the world a better place. And so really the first thing that we want to stand for is promoting professional excellence through professional standards, through advocating for policies and regulations that protect investors, as well as thought leadership and research that moves the industry forward. There's also professional development, and credentialing is a big part of that, and other learning, whether it's lifelong learning after the charter or maybe even before, is a big part of that as well. And then importantly, becoming part of a global network, part of a community that really speaks with one voice, that promotes investor welfare and puts their interests ahead of our own, allows us to deepen our influence and collaborate with industry leaders. So, some numbers on the chart, hopefully they don't confuse, but we're actually closer to 190,000 members now. We deliver exams in a non-pandemic year in the order about 360,000 examinations a year. And we work with 150 societies like that in Peru worldwide to help prosecute our mission And the charter has enjoyed a lot of recognition and acceptance by over 600 universities that incorporate the CFA program into their curriculum, and over 60 regulators in more than 40 markets that recognize the program as partial fulfillment towards some of their licensing requirements. And South America is actually quite prominent in that regard. But why would you want to get into the investment management profession? And I think establishing that motivation matters quite a bit, because the path to the charter is no small feat. But the reason you'd go down that path is because becoming a true investment professional truly makes people's lives better. It helps them realize their financial goals, and it's really a critical component of allowing capital to flow to its most productive use. So not just so that governments and corporations can grow, but so that lives can become better. And that's really what economics tells us. For me personally, one of the reasons I love this profession is because it is so diverse from a technical skills and analytical skills standpoint. Finance is the blend of math, statistics, economics, accounting, management, strategy, and leadership and interpersonal skills. That is a tremendously fulfilling and exciting way to go about building one's career. And I think it's very rewarding in that sense. So let's focus on the CFA program. And as we do, just note that it's actually one of 3 formal programs that CFA Institute offers. It's the largest, it's the most significant, and it's for those that make investment decisions. The Certificate in Investment Performance Measurement is a 2-level rather than a 3-level program that really focuses on how we evaluate the performance that investment managers create, and how do we use that information to help select investment managers. So really interesting thing, but not the topic of our discussion today. And at a more foundational level, Investment Foundations covers similar topic areas to the CFA program, but at a much more superficial level, and is really meant for those that work alongside investment professionals. So the wonderful thing about the CFA Charter is that it is the gold standard and a global standard that's been recognized worldwide. And it really was the brainchild of the industry back in the 1940s. And Benjamin Graham, who was Warren Buffett's mentor, really was a leader in envisioning what the CFA Charter would become. Back then, he actually called it a rating. And this is what he wrote about what would end up becoming the CFA Charter. He says, the analyst who qualifies for this rating would have the obvious advantage of prestige, improved ability to get a job, and a chance at higher pay. But he is also more likely to develop a more professional attitude towards his work and a keener interest in maintaining and advancing the standards of his calling. And I've always been struck by those words, in part because he uses the word calling, which is something more than a job. It's something more than a career. And it's even more than a profession. It's a term that we often reserve for the religious or someone who's really taking a wider view. And that's what I would encourage you to think about as you go down this path and contemplate your future. And fortunately, the program has grown tremendously over the years. And much of that has been in Asia in recent years, but certainly not all of it. South America has been a tremendous growth rates as it gains acceptance within universities. So, and this is a wonderful building also of the global network. So what do charter holders do? Most of them tend to work in equity and then fixed income after that. But if you look at this broad set of asset classes here, these are all alternatives which total up to about the same as fixed income. And then you've got this big category of not applicable and other. And there's a theme in that, and that is that the charter is versatile. And you'll see later, we refer to it as a generalist designation. So even though it's built around an analyst and a portfolio manager's workflow, it is nonetheless a generalist designation that applies across asset classes. And you can see here on the right, across job roles as well. So not listed here is the other category, which is a very, very large bar. So charter holders are certainly employed by the industry's largest firms, both on the buy side as well as the sell side. And one thing you'll notice about these firms is many of them are global. And interestingly, you will also see some accounting firms. And that, again, is a testament to the general applicability of the CFA charter. And really, that's what it does. It covers so many different areas of finance and products that it has this broad applicability. So let's talk a little bit about how we build that candidate body of knowledge so you know what it would prepare you for. I talked about job roles a moment ago, and the CFA program is really built around 3 core job roles: a security analyst that's valuing companies, a portfolio manager that's building strategies and generating ideas to meet investment goals and to fulfill mandates, and a wealth manager who's trying to put investment management within the context of a more holistic financial relationship for either an individual or a family. And many of the competencies within these job roles down at the bottom, for example, they transcend job roles. Ethical behavior is what it is across job roles. And there's certain foundational knowledge around economics and analytical skills that transcend job roles. But then there are competencies that are unique to these individual job roles. And we build a body of knowledge around these workflows. And how do we know what those workflows are? It starts with what's called practice analysis. And all of these processes are governed by practitioners. So all CFA Institute becomes really is a conduit, or maybe in some respects, a mirror to the industry of what it does. It doesn't tell the industry what it does. And all our job to do is to be a messenger. And that practice analysis asks, what is it that a practitioner with about 4 years of relevant work experience needs to know to be relevant within these particular job roles? And from that, we develop the candidate body of knowledge. And that knowledge then drives how we develop the curriculum. And I'll talk about some of those 2021 changes. That curriculum then drives the exam, which then gets graded, and then it enters into a process called standard setting, which is when practitioners, CFA Institute members, get together and tell us what that minimum passing score ought to be. So that's not CFA Institute. Well, CFA Institute Board of Directors actually does make that decision, but it's really led by practitioners. So here are the key concepts for that body of knowledge. I mentioned generalist a couple of times, but it needs to be global. And that's one of the wonderful, valuable things about it, is that it's a portable credential. It's a portable set of competencies. And in today's world, pandemics aside, geographic portability is highly valued. So what I'd really like to do is maybe just spend a little bit of time on this slide to sort of parse out a bit how the CFA program is designed. So I think folks know it's 3 levels. And those 3 levels are designed to correlate with the stage of your career. And so as a result, the topics that each level covers varies a bit. And the way in which those topics are covered and what the candidate is asked to do, it changes a bit. So at the first level, you might imagine it being targeted to someone that is just entering the career, perhaps as a junior analyst, and they're being asked to use investment tools. They're taking direction to calculate costs of capital, or to do research, or to conduct certain analyses, or even create certain reports. And so level 1 is predicated on knowledge and comprehension. And that's the type of learning that goes across the top. And as a result, the test is constructed around multiple choice. So going forward in 2021, in our new computer-based testing format, the exam will no longer be 6 hours. It will now be 4.5 hours of testing. And so the number of multiple choice questions has gone down by that exact proportion, and it will now be 240 multiple choice questions instead of 360. In level 2, we're asking the candidate to take those concepts and apply them in higher level analysis, specifically toward the valuation of different asset classes. And that requires a higher level of understanding and learning and a more integrative approach. So the exam is constructed around what's called item sets. And these are mini case studies followed by a series of related, it'll be 4 to 6 multiple choice questions. And there'll be 8 to 10 of these on any given exam. Level 3 is really for the seasoned professional. It focuses on portfolio management, both in the institutional as well as the private wealth management context. And that's asking the candidate to synthesize information and to make evaluations and create judgments where there might not sometimes be a single clear recommendation or answer. And that's really where the art of investment management comes in. And as a result, that exam is constructed half around these item sets, but then also half around essay and what we call constructed response. So that basic construct will go over into 2021 in the new computer-based testing format. Here's a quick look at the curriculum. Across the 3 levels, it's almost 9,000 pages of study. What I'll say here is that it looks like level 3 gets easier because there's fewer study sessions and there's fewer readings, there's fewer learning outcome statements. But that's actually not the case. Okay, it's just a richer set of content that requires fewer pages to get across, whereas a lot of these other things tend to be calculation based. So what else can we expect in 2021? Well, one of the things we did as the pandemic unfolded was we withheld the release of our 2021 curriculum. And we froze the curriculum for 2 years so that candidates taking the exam next year will be using the 2020 curriculum. And we did that because we had a number of deferred candidates that weren't able to sit for the exam who had studied this 2020 curriculum. And we didn't want them to have to study a different curriculum for when they did sit. So what are some of those changes? Well, we've got new content around ethics case studies The really exciting things for me here are not just that they sort of cover a broader set of standards, but they address more modern issues. So things like cryptocurrencies and algorithmic trading. So things that are more relevant and contemporary. We started a number of years ago building out our fintech content, and each year we've made incremental embellishments to that. In the 19 curriculum, for example, machine learning was added as part of the regression reading. Now it's broken out as its own standalone reading, as is data analytics. We've been working on and refining the integration of ESG for a number of years, largely through case studies. We are trying to integrate ESG within existing readings because the industry is telling us it's not a standalone topic. It's part of everything that we do. In the portfolio management section, we've really built out the content in new investment products, so around exchange traded funds, updated the content around trading and electronic markets to make that more contemporary. And also on the portfolio management side, we introduced new readings in wealth management. So it's specifically trying to address private client issues within the framework of risk management. And I think just maybe the last thing I'll say here is that we're also building out content in alternative investing. Not that the content wasn't there before, but we're updating it and building and expanding it because it's an ever-growing asset class. The other thing I'll say on that is that there are more CFA charter holders in the alternative investment space than there are CAIA charter holders. And I think that speaks not to the fact that CAIA is not relevant and high quality, because I think it is, being an honorary charter holder there, but because the charter is so relevant in the valuation of that space. And that's not really what the CAIA program focuses on. So when you become a member, you'll get access to all sorts of materials. And one of the things we do is say, here are the new readings. Here's what you need to stay up to date with those new charter holders that are coming up the ranks that want to take your job. So what kind of support would you get in the CFA program? I think I would just guide you with a couple of tips, all right? And I've got like 11 tips I could give in terms of how to help prepare for the charter, but these highest among them. So the first is study the curriculum. You're not going to want to do it, but the exam is written based on the curriculum and the curriculum alone. And so if you want to know what's in the item writer's mind, that's going to be it. The second is that for all the data analytics we do around candidate success, the one most dominant driving factor to candidate success is the unsurprising result that the more hours a candidate puts in preparing for the exam, the more likely they are to succeed. And I almost wish that weren't the case, because I'd love to think that there was another way, but we have yet to find it. And then just be patient with yourself. It's generally not a quick and dirty endeavor, but we are doing our best to make it as effective for you as possible. And I'm super pleased that a couple of years ago, we launched a learning ecosystem, which is an online digital platform that presents the curriculum in smaller lessons, digital chunks, and does it within the context of a study plan that's customized to your timeline and automatically updates as you make your way through the curriculum. So if you're slowing down, it recalibrates how much time you have left for the remaining material. It'll also use your performance on end of chapter questions and test questions to guide you where it is that you might want to spend more or less time. The other wonderful thing about it is it has a whole section of games and peer-to-peer networking, and it's free in the sense that it's part of registration, as is the ebook version of the curriculum or the PDF version, all of which is free. You can get a print version, but it'll cost you $170. So this is a quick screenshot of what the learning ecosystem looks like. And it uses data analytics to provide a customized learning path for you, and it adapts to what it is that you're doing. And it incorporates the latest advances in instructional design. So it uses notifications that help create permanency in your learning through something called spaced repetition. So when you learn something for the first time, you get reintroduced to it very quickly thereafter, and then it spaces another repetition at a longer interval thereafter, and then a longer interval thereafter. And these multiple, more spaced out exposures create durability and indelibility to the learning. Really wonderful stuff. It's on both a mobile and PC platform that is integrated, so it's linked. And it provides a personalized learning experience. So what about this shift to paper-based testing? So this is the big news for 2021. Lots going on. Let me first talk a little bit about why we shift to computer-based testing. And I'm going to basically start with that last bullet because honestly, it's probably the most important. And I was the one that brought this to the Board of Governors several years ago for approval. And my opening line to them was, candidates go to work with computers, not number 2 pencils. And that's, more than anything else is the reason for shifting to computer-based testing. It's a matter of relevance. It's how the world operates, but it has a ton of benefits. The first of which is flexibility for you as a candidate, because now not only do you have 4 chances as a level 1 candidate rather than 2 to sit the exam, within each testing window, you've got flexibility to choose your date, and in some cases time within a day. So you're not stuck to one day and one time in any given sitting. Testing centers are very convenient. You'll see a little bit how convenient in a moment. They create a very safe environment for candidates to sit for the exam. There's barriers between stations, there's distance between candidates, and it is a highly secure way to administer the exam, much more secure than in a large testing hall. So, and because it allows us to increase the number of administrations at every level, it just provides better access to the exam, especially in markets where access is otherwise compromised. So here's a little bit of comparison between what was paper-based, we just administered our last one this month, and computer-based. And the wonderful thing is that rather than administering the exam in 192 locations around the world, we're going to be administering it in over 400 locations in each, and at least as many test centers or test areas as it was offered before. And even if you schedule the exam on one day, you could change it if something in your life changed for a modest fee. So other than that, the exam format will not change, with the exception of the length of the testing sessions. Now, moving beyond 2021, the testing format may change. And I don't have a view into how that might be just yet. But the idea is that by administering on a computer, you can now create assessments that more closely replicate the work experience that a practitioner has in the workplace. So what that looks like yet around modeling, using spreadsheets or something else is yet to be determined, but that's one of the benefits of computer-based testing is it opens up those possibilities, but it's not what you will see in 2021. What will you experience in the test center? You'll see robust securities when you walk in, and you'll be asked to empty your pockets. You'll be asked to take off your glasses. You'll be asked to put your things in a locker. You'll be monitored both from a invigilator that will be looking at you and the other candidates in the test center, but also on video. And you will be given writing materials, okay? And it's generally a whiteboard and a marker for you to do all your calculations on, and you'll still bring your own computer. So although the testing experience itself will be 4.5 hours, that's the actual graded testing time. The larger testing experience will be actually 5.5 hours because there will be 30 minutes of tutorial on how to use the system, make sure you're comfortable, taking a pledge, and then you'll have an optional break in between the two sessions of 30 minutes. So the 2021 testing schedule. So it's different than what we originally conceived before the pandemic. Because now we have a bunch of candidates, and you may be among them, who were unable to sit for the exam, and we need to find a place and time for them to sit the exam in 2021. So we created a new testing window here in July that won't normally be there. And we're receiving candidates across all levels in May. We're reserving this February window for only level 1 candidates because those are many of the candidates that got deferred from 2020. And each of these windows is being expanded to some degree or another, okay, by as much as from 1 week to 2 weeks. So there'll be more opportunities to sit the exam in the window. As we emerge from COVID-19. But what I wanted to do also here is give you a sense of what this exam window or the exam schedule is likely, and I need to put that qualifier on, but likely to look like in the next year, 2022, which would be sort of the more steady state that we would expect after that. And in that scenario, the July window would drop off because we wouldn't need it anymore. And level 2 would shift back to February where we initially wanted it. And we're not sitting levels 3 in both August and November. So the basic pattern here is this. At level 1, 4 times a year in each testing window. Level 2, twice a year, February, August. And level 3, twice a year, May, November. That provides twice as many seating opportunities as the old testing model and is really value add. Of course, the price is up there. Great thing about the CFA program is that although this is not an insubstantial amount of money, you can complete the program for $2,500, which is less than a master's level course. So it's very competitive in that respect. So what do you need to do to become a charter holder? Not just pass the exams. You need to also acquire 4,000 hours of qualified work experience and obtain some references and meet regular membership requirements like attesting to the code and ethics. So this slide does, I think, a great job of summing up why you would want to become a charter holder. We talked about the gold standard. We talked about it being a global passport. But I kind of want to emphasize the two in the bottom right corner because we didn't talk a lot about that. And it's really the value of being part of a prestigious network is invaluable. So no matter where I go around the globe, I know I can call on a local CFA charter holder. Generally, I'm going to do that through one of the local societies because that's where my network is. And I can understand what's going on in that market. And I can be highly regarded in that market by virtue of the charter. And increasingly, we're offering career resources for our members. We just launched a new career platform that helps build resumes, provides coaching, and as well as a job board for candidates. So lots to take advantage of there. So I think Paul wanted to open it up with Rolando for questions, which I'm, of course, happy to take. And I'm very appreciative for being here.
Perfect, Stephen. Thank you very much. It's really valuable what you have said about the CFA program. And please, Rolando, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. I mean, it was very clear for me. I took the level 1 in November in 2006, like a long time ago. And as you mentioned, the curriculum has changed a lot, right? The CFA Institute has introduced new things and it's very updated. The question I have is the following. Many of our students ask about what is the difference between obtaining the charter holder and pursuing a master's in finance pro. Because here in Peru, some students prefer to have the master in finance rather than spending time doing the CFA. So I don't know if you can elaborate a little bit more about that difference between both.
Yeah, I'd love to. And it's a great question. And you're right. It's a very common question. A related one, by the way, which I won't answer, I'll answer the one you posed, is how does the MBA compare? How does the CFA compare to the MBA? Right. But the MS in finance is a similar but different question. So I would actually say the MSF and the CFA are a bit more similar than the MBA and the CFA, but they're still different. So in the MSF, two things will be different. So one is you will do more active project work. You will conduct more analyses. You will conduct deeper analyses, and you'll actually get your hands dirty. As a distant learning program, and at the moment paper-based, we're limited, honestly, in the extent to which we can do that. As we develop these digital learning platforms and our digital testing platform, will close that gap a bit. But that's one difference. The other difference is that the MSF is a bit more theoretical than the CFA program. CFA program is more applied, and it's more focused. So even though the MSF isn't quite as broad as the MBA, it's still broader than the CFA. There's typically management courses or some other, general business curricula as part of a Master's of Finance that wouldn't be part of CFA. So in sum, the CFA is more focused, more practical, and less hands-on than the MSF. All that said, I would also say that because of their differences, they complement each other very well, which is also the case for the MBA, maybe even more so. The MBA and the CFA are highly complementary.
Okay, thank you. I will add something. It's cheaper also, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it is cheaper. And you know, and I'll add to that, it's also more flexible, right? I mean, that's what one of the advantages is, you know, you can sit out a level if, you know, you decide to get married or something comes up in your life. The number of people I know that have tried to sit for the CFA charter around the time they get married is beyond me. Some of them do it, but it's not a good bet.
Okay, thank you. There's another question from the participants. Thank you for your great information. My question is about the experience required for becoming a CFA charter holder. That is around 4,000 hours. Must be in an investment field necessary, or it could be in any other finance area.
Or it could be in what was the suggested
any
alternative?
other finance area. Should be in investment field or any other.
So it doesn't have to be in investments. So, you know, broadly speaking, the work experience needs to be correlated with the curriculum in some sense. And the way that's articulated is contributing to the investment management process. So I could be a corporate treasurer that was responsible for the treasury function in my organization, and that would qualify as experience. I might be a corporate financial analyst for an oil company evaluating projects. And if I'm doing the financial analysis on the project, that's an allocation of capital that would qualify as work experience. So it doesn't necessarily, or I could be an auditor auditing an investment management firm or a mutual fund company, and that would qualify as work experience. So it doesn't have to be within investment management itself. It just kind of needs to align with the curricula. I think you're on mute.
Can I be like an analyst who works in the Ministry of Finance?
Yes, I believe so. So the way the process works is, you know, I love these questions because what it highlights is that there is sometimes a subjective nature to this. So the way the process works is you would describe your work experience and you would submit it. And oftentimes what you will do, and in fact, you can request if you want, is get feedback on the description, all right? And they'll say, well, can you tell us more about this? Can you tell us more about that? Or clarify a point, and that'll help bring out the elements that the team is looking for to make that evaluation. And then somebody else, like a supervisor, will attest to that. So the mindset is not to be exclusionary. The mindset is really to look for inclusion, to look for the alignment rather than to try to find misalignment.
Okay. And other question, what happens if, is there any kind of special situations in which, although you have passed 3 exams, like, and that won't allow you to be a charter holder, some ethical situations, some problems that won't allow you to be a charter holder?
So there are, and sometimes people pass the exams and they don't go into the industry. You know, they just do something else. By the way, one of my very dear friends is an attorney, and he's never been an investment manager, but he's an attorney for a hedge fund. So he his experience as an attorney for a hedge fund qualifies for the work experience, but sometimes people just pursue a different path. Yes, one of the member requirements you must have is to abide by the code and standards, and that's an attestation you would make every year. And so if there were a violation, you might very well be prohibited from carrying the CFA charter, even though you passed the 3 exams. So there could be any number of reasons somebody's passed the exams without carrying the charter. And it's perfectly acceptable in the code and standards lay this out in agonizing detail, as I'm sure you're aware, of ways to represent that you've passed the exam without connoting that you are actually a CFA charter holder.
Thank you. I don't know if there are more questions from the participants.
I have one actually. Steve, once you earn the charter holder, would you please describe to us what kind of activities, is there any kind of continuing learning experience with the CFA Institute, and also events in which we can share different thoughts with other people around the world, and also events with specific topics?
So I love that you asked. And just there's so many things to talk about there that I want to make sure that I cover all the points. It's just a fabulous question. So the first, yes, there's plenty of learning opportunities after the charter. So, and why is that? There's at least 2 reasons why that's the case. I actually like to think that there's 3. So the first is that the charter is, as I said, intended to be a generalist designation. It's not a specialist designation, which means it does not cover to the same level of detail. Alternatives investments would be an example that a specialist designation would cover. It covers technical analysis, but doesn't do so to the same level of depth as the chartered market technicians does, and so on. So when you specialize in a field, you'll want to do additional learning that goes beyond what the charter offers. That's one. The second is that the world will change, and that's why the curriculum changes. And so you'll always, in today, it would be ESG, or it would be data analytics. And so you'll want to continue your learning there. And then the third reason is more common than I think we'd all like to believe, but it's reality. And that is, sometimes we just need to relearn the stuff that we learned once already. And I can tell you, I wouldn't want to sit for the CFA exam today without having studied for it, because Rolando, you may have taken the exam in 2006, but I completed mine in 1993.
Wow.
So yeah, I got a lot of learning to keep up on. So, so yes, lots of learning after the CFA exam. That's one. One of the wonderful silver linings that have come out of this global pandemic is that we, like every organization, has shifted programming to virtual. And even coming out of the pandemic, we're going to be maintaining a very large component of virtual programming to offer to our members. Now, I have on my wall, I should put it up behind me so folks can, well, actually, you know what? I didn't know you were going to ask this question, I swear, but I just happen to have, this is my 20-year continuing education certificate, which will flip over to 25 years soon. I'm proud to say. So in order to earn that, it's 20 hours of education, relevant education every year, 2 of which should be ethics. Okay. And there's a lot of flexibility on what that learning looks like. And so there's plenty of opportunity to do it. And all the virtual programming we do, or all the live events we do, would qualify. We of course have regional conferences and global conferences, but our societies offer a wealth of wonderful programming as well. Peru, with, I don't know if Melvin's on the line, I'm sure he's not, but he's just been a tremendous leader in offering learning programming, and societies are offering lots of virtual programming. So the opportunities are really endless. And so the other thing I'd say about that is that I would encourage people to be looking for and thinking about volunteer opportunities after they go through the program. And much of that, more often than not, that would start with the society, because designing those learning programs, whether they're in person, whether they're virtual, designing the networking events, or any of the other resources that are made available to members, really falls on the backs of volunteers that want to be part of this global community. And one of the wonderful benefits of being a volunteer is not just that you get to meet and work with great people, but it's a wonderful professional networking endeavor as well. So would strongly encourage folks to do that. And oftentimes, not all the time, that's connected with learning as well.
Perfect.
Thank you. There's another question. Which level of the CFA is necessary to be an asset management senior in a financial institution?
I would say all 3 levels. And that's, I deleted the chart from my slide deck. If I had it, I would hit it up. But we've got a chart that surveys members about the relevance of the charter for specific job roles. And when you look at the senior job roles, the CIO, portfolio managers, the relevance rankings are off the charts, and that's where portfolio management is. So for senior levels, I think it would be all 3. And okay. And I think the other thing I'd say there, to sort of validate my point empirically, is that when we look at what I call penetration, or you can think about it as market share. So how prevalent is the CFA charter among different job roles? What you'll find is that even though there's fewer senior job roles than there are mid-level and junior, typical pyramid, right? The proportional representation of CFA charters is higher at the more senior job roles at the top of the pyramid than even the bottom. So, so really all 3.
Okay, thank you. And other question is, how can I apply for the CFA Scholarship?
So there's a couple of ways, and it depends on what kind of scholarship you would want to apply for. So we have professor scholarships, in which case you'd apply directly to CFA Institute. I will presume that's not the case. We offer women's scholarships, in which case you can apply directly to CFA Institute. And we also offer scholarships through societies. So in this case, I direct you to the Peru Society, and the amount of scholarships that are available in any given year are predicated on the demand for those scholarships in the previous year. So the supply is intended to keep up with demand on a 1-year lag.
Okay, thank you. More questions. There's one question regarding what's in Spanish is how complementary is this, what the knowledge you learned in the CFA level 1 and what an auditor does in firms, in the financial system. How can he complement if he an auditor with the knowledge in the level 1 at least? Yeah.
That is a really good question. I've not gotten that one before. So here is my first reaction to that. And the reason I'm hesitating is because I'm trying to sketch out what the auditor does. I've got more clarity on what level 1 is than what the auditor does. But this is what I'd say. I think there's a significant proportion of the material that overlaps. Okay. So things like statistics, basic corporate finance, and even basic economics that would be very, I don't know if complementary is the right word, but very closely aligned with what an auditor does. There is, however, I think a substantial amount of content that wouldn't be a normal part of auditor training for a financial services firm. And that would be things around the structure of the industry. I would also include ethics and the professional codes and all the case studies. And I'd also include, there's a cursory treatment of portfolio management and the investment management process at level 1, as well as some alternatives, some introductory content on alternatives. So, so I would say that there's some overlap, but there's substantial added material that an auditor probably wouldn't naturally come across in their training, but could put to use depending on the nature of the audit.
In my opinion, like the auditor needs to audit, for example, a trading desk. So he needs to understand what the trading desk does, right? If not, he will be loose, right?
No, that's exactly right. And so I completely agree. So it very much depends on the nature of the audit. Is it a trading desk? Is it, you know, an investment banking operation? Is it a wealth management operation? So yeah, exactly.
Okay. Other question is there a benefit if I decide to take the exam in London, New York, or Lima?
So only based on what's more convenient for you. So the exam will be the same assessment. It'll be the same length, the same test center experience. One's not going to be easier or harder than the other. So that's one of the beautiful things about the CFA program is whether you take it in Peru, Panama, or Portland or Portugal. You know, so the deciding factor would be what's most convenient for you.
Okay. Let's see, there's one question in Spanish. Would you recommend for a person, a 40-year-old person, to start having the CFA exams? But this person has 15 years of experience working in corporate finance, administration, risk, planning, insurance. Will it be recommendable?
That's a good question. So, so first of all, I know quite a few mid-career professionals that decide to start the CFA program. The attorney I mentioned was one of them. That said, our candidates tend to be, average age is high 20s, call it 27 or so, okay? And that had come down over the years. So it used to be that the 40-year-old was a very typical candidate. And the average age has come down substantially. Why is that? It's a little bit of two reasons. But mostly, it's not so much that there's fewer 40-year-olds coming, it's that there's more 22-year-olds coming and right out of school and the like. So should the 40-year-old in corporate finance do it? The way I'd answer that is, where do you see your career going from here? So if your career is going to be around managing corporate assets, around an investment portfolio, I think it may very well be worth your while to do that. The CFA charter has become increasingly regarded and popular in corporate finance. It's still not as prevalent there as it is in investment management, but more so over the years, to be sure. But based on the description I heard in the question, if that weren't to change, it might not be worth all the effort, right? Maybe then what you want to do is not so much earn the credential, but pick out the small slices that you would want to learn and become proficient at. But if you expect your career to evolve towards more investment management-like decisions, then yeah, I would recommend it.
Okay, thank you. There's another question. I don't know if I will translate it, but I don't know if that is what you meant. It's like, what happens if you have like a bad score in the financial system in Peru? Will that be a problem to have the CFA charter holder?
Can you describe for me what a bad score in the financial system is?
I think the question is like, I don't know if the person, Ernesto, I don't know if you can clarify a little bit more about your question. What does it mean to be like 100% lost? It seems to me as if it were like you are owning money there.
Yes, basically it's someone who doesn't have who has a very low credit quality in the financial system, very low credit quality in the financial system, has a lot of debts and
credit score.
Yes.
Got you. So the question there is whether or not it might be tied to an ethical violation. So if I were to file for bankruptcy, okay, that would not be considered an ethical violation, and I can still hold my charter. I could, if I were to get a speeding ticket, or even we call it in the United States a DWI, driving while intoxicated. Not a good thing, but it wouldn't disqualify me from being a charter. It would need to be related to the professional standards to be a disqualification. So I think the answer to the question is that the low rating by itself would not exclude, it would depend on the causes for it.
Perfect. Well,
one question.
Is there any other question?
I have one question. Some students have asked me. One question. Some students have asked me about what is a minimum period for me to have the charter holder. Can I have it like in 2 years, very fast, or I have to wait like 3 or 4 years?
So good question. And it depends on what your starting point is, okay, on two bases. So if we look at just the test, that's changed a little bit with computer-based testing, okay? So under the old model of paper-based, you could conceivably have an 18-month span between sitting for level 1 and sitting for level 3. Okay, you could go what we called December, June, June. All right. Now, that 18-month span wouldn't include the studying that would presumably require to proceed level 1. So we'll call it 6 months of studying just to make around, 2 years. Okay. And how has that changed with CBT? So now a CBT, we've got more opportunities to sit for the exam. You're still not going to be able to sit more than twice in any given year. Okay. So that 18 is actually gonna let's see, does that change? It might get squeezed to 12, but then you still got the 6 to add. So maybe it compresses from 24 months to 18 months from a testing perspective. Okay. But remember, you have these 4,000 hours of work experience. Okay. Now, where does 4,000 hours come from? The old rule was you needed 4 years of work experience at halftime. Okay. And so at 2,000 hours approximately per year, that was at halftime, that ends up being 4,000 hours a year. We changed it from that construct, a yearly construct, it was actually measured in months, to measuring it in hours. And the reason we did was 2 reasons. One is to accommodate the gig environment and how many people often transition in and out of work arrangements and consultancies, and women being more affected by those sorts of temporal arrangements than men. So, but those 4,000 hours can't be accumulated in any less than 3 years. All right. So you've got 2 windows to think about. Your testing window, which we can call 18 months, and then your work experience window, which is a minimum of 3 years. So depending on when you've started your work experience versus when you've started your testing window will determine how quickly you can earn the charter.
Okay, perfect. Well, time's up. We really thank you, Steve, for all the valuable information and for taking your time, your precious time to share your thoughts.
There's one more question.
There's one more final question?
Yeah, there's one more question from Jose Manuel Quispe.
Okay, go ahead.
CFA can, like, if I'm a charter holder, if I approve the 3 levels, can they help us to find a job? Like, there's like a place inside a web page, there's a lot of jobs located, like job postings.
Yes, there are. Yep. And they're organized by geography and job role. So it is our job board. So if you went to the CFA Institute website at cfainstitute.org and clicked on the Career Center, it will take you to a wealth of resources, including a job board, but also much more.
Okay. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Steve. Thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing with us the different changes that has been in the CFA curriculum, for sharing your thoughts. I would say that Peru is one of the countries in which the demand for obtaining the CFA charter holder is increasing a lot. It has increased a lot in the last 10 years. With Rolando, we are also teachers in the undergrad university with that CFA curriculum, and we're really very, very thankful for your valuable thoughts. Y muchas gracias a todos también por haber participado en esta excelente webinar. Thank you very much and good night.
Muchas gracias.